Central Texas. July 1944. The light arrives early and without mercy, flooding the fields in molten gold until every object shines too sharply to touch. A heat mirage shimmers above the dusty road as 3 army trucks grind through a low cloud of grit. Their tires chew the red earth, leave a trail of fine powder that drifts behind like smoke from a vanished fire. The convoy coughs to a stop beside a rectangle of barbed wire stretched across open prairie. The air is dense, smelling of creosote and sun-baked wood. Doors creak open. One by one, men emerge, thin, pale, the color of weariness. They blink into the glare, their eyes adjusting to a sky so vast it almost humiliates them. The wind catches their coats, tugging at faded gray cloth still faintly creased by European winters. From the driver's seat of the lead truck, a sergeant wipes his forehead with the back of his hand. "Welcome to Texas, boys," he says, not loud, mostly to himself. His voice feels swallowed by the landscape. The prisoners understand few of the words, but the tone, the mixture of authority and awkward decency needs no translation. What they see seems improbable. Barracks neat as schoolhouses, fences strung in precise angles, white gravel paths leading into the distance. Not a ruin, not a bomb crater. The air trembles with cicadas and the invisible hum of industry. Nearby trains clicking toward Houston, harvest trucks shuttling bales of cotton, life continuing in rhythmic defiance of war. The German soldiers shift uneasily, unsure whether to expect cruelty or ceremony. They had imagined America as propaganda had painted it, mechanical, impersonal, overflowing with resources meant only for weapons. Yet here, the first thing they encounter is sunlight and an absence of menace. A tall guard with rolled-up sleeves gestures toward an open gate. "Mess hall that way. Food'll be ready." His drawl turns the sentence gentle. Inside the wire, the scent of something cooking thickens the air. Beef tallow, dry onions, flour browned in lard. And beneath it, another aroma roasted, burnt, sweetly bitter. It floats above the camp like an invisible banner. The prisoners look around, puzzled by familiarity. Coffee? Could it be true? Many have not tasted it in months, not since U-boat blockades strangled the supply lines back home. As the line forms, they follow the rhythm of military obedience, hands behind backs, eyes forward. An American corporal stands by the field kitchen, a cloth tucked into his belt, ladling a dark liquid into tin mugs. The hollow clang of metal on metal echoes through the yard. When the cups are full, steam rises twisting and ghost-thin, disappearing into the sun. A corporal hands the first cup to Keller, the former sergeant of an artillery unit. Keller hesitates for the briefest moment, unsure whether to nod, salute, or simply accept it. His fingers brush warm aluminum. The heat bites his palms. The smell is intoxicating, but strange. He lifts it carefully, blows across the surface, and sips. The reaction travels through his body like an unfinished sentence. The taste is weak, almost watery. The flavor of caffeine diluted by far too much mercy. He glances at the guard, bewildered. The guard shrugs. "That's all the beans we got." Behind Keller, another prisoner, the youngest of their group, 21, freckles under the grime of voyage, mutters half under his breath, "You call this coffee?" A few nearby smirk. The words contain more home than defiance. The guard raises his eyebrows. No offense taken. Perhaps he's heard something similar in his own barracks when rations get thin. The moment hangs neither hostile nor friendly, suspended between jokes and fatigue. Around them, the camp smells of new paint and dry grass, the strange cleanliness of an unfinished town. The sky beats down as if to bleach every trace of Europe from their uniforms. For a few seconds, Keller imagines his wife standing in their kitchen in Stuttgart, pouring strong black coffee into porcelain cups painted with tiny blue flowers. The sharp aroma of it, the warmth of the ceramic, the sound of the city tram outside the window. That memory rushes and vanishes like a bird startled into flight. He sets the mug down and watches the steam fade. Expectation collides with reversal. The first meal in America is not humiliation nor comfort, but confusion distilled into liquid form. The enemy offers them civility. The world begins to feel unsteady because of it. The coffee is weak, the hospitality strong, and the moral footing uncertain. Under the blistering Texas sun, the prisoners swallow their surprise with each thin sip. The guards lean in the shade, watching, neither mocking nor welcoming, simply measuring time through shared routine. In this light, there are no good flavors, only the human taste of adaptation. The line moves slowly. Dust clings to sweat. The wind dries it to salt. When the last man receives his cup, the trucks rumble away toward the motor pool, leaving silence that pulses with the smell of heat and chicory. Somewhere beyond the fence, a meadowlark calls 3 clear notes that require no translation. The prisoners stand uncertain of protocol, coffee in hand, eyes drawn toward the horizon that stretches too far to imagine ever crossing again. It is the edge of captivity's first morning in a land of open space. In that open space, a cup tells them everything, that victory and loss have become flavors, that kindness can feel like disorientation, that the ordinary can taste like surrender. They drink, and the day begins. The road outside Camp Hearn unspools straight through prairie country, an amber ribbon under a punishing sky. At dawn, the horizon melts into haze. By 9, the air ripples like hot glass. This is the heart of Texas in 1944, land both old and busy, stitched by rail lines and rumor. Every few hours, someone hears a locomotive whistle from the tracks that link the camp to the wider war. Cattle cars, canvas-covered trucks, boxcars marked U.S. Army Transportation Corps. Life has narrowed into process and repetition. The mornings belong to the cooks, men in khaki aprons who scrub pans with sand and boil water drawn from a deep, brackish well. Their recipe cards, typed and coffee-stained, promise efficiency rather than flavor. Powdered eggs whipped by an industrial mixer. Loaves of government bread warm beside gallons of chicory brew that darkens but never strengthens. At first, the German prisoners marvel half amused, half offended at how enormous everything seems. The trucks, the stoves, even the coffee urns appear outsized, as if America has declared war on delicacy itself. They were trained to measure efficiency in precision. Americans seem to measure it in volume. And yet, beneath the swagger of scale, daily rituals move with surprising gentleness. The guards are young, sunburned boys speaking a drawl that softens the consonants and bends time into honey. Some have only recently traded plow handles for rifles. They wear tan campaign hats that cast perfect circles of shadow across their faces. Discipline exists here, but it has a distinctly rural accent. Orders sound almost polite. "Line up yonder," or "Coffee's up, fellas." To the new arrivals, the tone feels oddly civil. Suspicion and relief wrestle silently between ribs. The POWs are gathered into companies, assigned bunks, then set to work shaping the barren land into order. They paint fences, straighten signposts, build latrines with engineers' precision. In the small victories of construction lies an echo of home of cobblestone towns rebuilt after bombings, only without the threat overhead. By mid-afternoon, shirts plaster to backs, Sweat etches pale tracks through the powder of red dust. The camp itself could almost be mistaken for a factory district. Barracks sit in symmetrical rows, each with a narrow porch, a metal pail for washing, a nailed-up shoe brush beside the door. Between the huts, clotheslines sway with garments bleached to uniform color by the Texas sun. On Sundays, a faint chorus of harmonicas drifts out a waltz learned on the Rhine, now floating across American air. Meanwhile, beyond the wire, civilian life pushes forward. In the nearby town, grocery shelves display ration stamps like small flags. Sugar number 13, coffee number 15. A bell rings from a white clapboard church. Children chase each other down the street with paper airplanes shaped like Mustangs and Messerschmitts alike. They argue with theatrical intensity about which will win the war. Inside a dim cafe on Main Street, an elderly woman wipes the counter, eyes flicking toward the camp road whenever a military jeep passes. To her, prisoners have become part of scenery, another crop to be managed before harvest ends. Back in the enclosure, time arranges itself by sound. The bugle at 6, the mess hall line at 6:30, the clatter of tin trays echoing off the barracks walls. By evening, an engine generator hums low while the floodlights blink to life. Those bulbs, strung high above the fence, give everything the color of cold brass. No one sleeps easily under that light, not Americans, not Germans. Each man feels observed by the silent gaze of duty. For many prisoners, strangeness becomes education. They learn the gestures of American habit, the casual salute of 2 fingers from brow to brim, the way Texans punctuate sentences with "sir," whether joking or sincere. Soon the camp library, stocked with donated books, receives visitors from both sides of the fence. A German mechanic picks up Tom Sawyer, tracing the print with cautious interest. An American guard glances at a German grammar, muttering the unfamiliar vowels under his breath. In the quiet of shared curiosity, the war retreats for a breath or two. Even the weather feels pedagogical. Texas heat teaches endurance. Its sudden storms teach humility. When the sky breaks open, rain slashes across the compound in bright, violent sheets. Guards and prisoners alike dash for cover, laughing unguarded laughter that would shame them in full daylight. Within minutes, puddles swallow boot tracks, erasing ranks and nationalities together. When the rain stops, steam rises in translucent ribbons, and the familiar scent returns chicory, weak and endlessly forgiving. That coffee, more symbol than sustenance, becomes the small clock around which the camp revolves. It announces morning, softens discipline, fills the gaps between 2 languages. Each cup is a compromise, a substitute, stretched thin, just enough to keep hope brewing. In it, America's abundance meets its wartime restraint, and the prisoner's nostalgia collides with an empire learning how to be merciful. By late September, the guards begin saving scraps of real beans given by families at home, mixing them secretly into the chicory brew on special days Christmas or the end of harvest. One sip of that darker liquid can make a man close his eyes and forget the fences for a heartbeat. It tastes like Europe remembered through distance, stronger, sadder, briefly alive. The camp's rhythm is neither victory nor defeat. Its maintenance the slow, deliberate act of keeping humanity from rusting in captivity. And through it all, the smell lingers, roasted air, scorched mystery, the fragile warmth of something ordinary enough to be shared. The noon whistle cuts through the dry air like a knife across canvas. The prisoners halt in their tasks. Some stop hammering fence posts, others lay shovels carefully on the ground. Sweat glistens along their temples as they file toward the mess hall. Dust follows them in disciplined clouds, settling on boots and collars. Inside, the heat thickens until breathing feels like effort. The hall is built of pine planks still exhaling resin. Its walls hold a permanent echo of spoons, low talk, and the squeak of benches against the floor. Tin trays slide down a counter toward the steaming vats where American cooks, forearms slick and shining, ladle out midday rations. Today's menu: chipped beef and gravy, cornmeal bread, stewed apples, and of course, the customary pot of coffee, thin, brown, dependable. The flavor of routine. Keller, now accustomed to the ritual, stands midway in line. His mind flits briefly to the morning reports he'd written years earlier, noting ammunition counts on the Eastern Front. Such precision seems absurd compared to the arithmetic that now dominates his life. Minutes left before meals, inches between bunk beds, ounces of sugar. He reaches the urn, holds out his cup. The corporal on duty fills it without fuss, just as another would refill a gas tank. When their eyes meet, there is neither hostility nor friendliness, only a faint mutual weariness. Keller takes the cup, inhales the rising steam, and for reasons he can't explain mutters, "Danke." The corporal nods. "Don't mention it." His southern accent draws out the syllables until they sound almost kind. Keller sits, the wood bench creaking beneath him. A private across the table lifts his mug and smiles. "To coffee," he declares in slow German. Laughter circles the table, brief but true. Then silence returns, heavy yet somehow companionable. The men eat quickly, the metallic scraping of spoons forming a rhythm as steady as a metronome. The guard detail near the door exchanges glances. They have learned to recognize this quiet not as plotting, but as peace, a rare, careful species. One of them whispers, "They're easier when they got something warm in 'em." Later that day, during work detail outside the wire, the contradictions that govern the camp emerge plainly. German prisoners mend irrigation ditches alongside African-American farmhands hired from nearby ranches. Both groups labor under the same sun, both bound by rules not of their own making. They nod to each other with a mixture of shyness and respect. One world's enemy meets another world's inequality, and neither quite knows what to do except work. When the supervisor brings out a canteen of coffee during the break, he offers it down the line to each man guard, worker, prisoner alike. The liquid is still the same translucent brown, but sharing it feels illicit, subversive. For a moment, rank dissolves as each hand grips the same battered cup before passing it on. A week later, a different tension. News filters through. Allied troops have landed in Normandy. Cheers erupt briefly among the American guards before decorum reasserts itself. The prisoners hear the celebration from across the camp road, a burst of song, a spell of laughter, and they understand everything without translation. That evening, the mood inside the wire shifts. The Germans line up as usual, but conversation dies quickly. When Keller finally sits down with his cup of coffee, he finds its taste unbearable, bitterness sweetened only by resignation. Across the room, the guard captain watches, guilt flickering in his eyes. Yet he still raises his tin in a small salute, as though to say, "It's nothing personal, Sergeant." Such moments accumulate like dust along the edges of conscience. Every courtesy carries its own discomfort. The braver the friendliness, the heavier the silence afterward. Sometimes, after mail call, the guards linger awkwardly, unsure whether sympathy insults or heals. Then someone inevitably breaks the weight of it with humor. "You call this coffee?" And laughter ripples again, small, tired, necessary. One night the generator fails, and the camp falls into darkness thicker than memory. From somewhere in the kitchens comes the scrape of a match, then the flare of a lantern. A faint glow spreads across the room where men sit around tables, their breath visible in the sudden chill. Somebody heats water on a makeshift stove. When the liquid begins to steam, the smell reaches them a ghost of morning in the middle of night. Keller holds his cup close, cupping the warmth. He realizes the smell is less about caffeine than about endurance. It is proof that a day can still begin, even here. Around him, others drink in quiet synchrony, a choir of soft sips and sighs. At that same moment, on the other side of the fence, the corporal sits in the guard shack staring at his own mug. He cannot see the prisoners, yet he imagines them doing exactly what he is doing. Craving warmth, pretending calm, hoping this strange decency works both ways. By November, harvest time brings a new rhythm. The prisoners are sent to pick cotton in nearby fields. The work is slow, methodical, the stalks scratching their wrists. The farmers supervising them bring jugs of coffee, diluted and sweetened with sorghum syrup. The taste surprises Keller, still weak, but oddly pleasant, tinged with earth and sugar. He smiles despite himself, and the farmer laughs. "That'll put hair on ya," the Texan says. Keller catches only the tone and smiles wider, not needing translation. Every week, more contradictions. Prisoners laboring for the enemy, yet building fences to hold their own freedom. Guards enforcing captivity, yet slipping newspapers and cigarettes through the wire. War has never felt both so distant and so intimate. Then comes Christmas. The camp orchestra plays carols learned half from hymn books, half from memory. Guards attend, arms folded, shifting their weight uneasily as the tunes rise into cold starlight. Near the end, an American cook carries in a pot coffee thickened with saved beans and a handful of sugar from everyone's rations. The aroma fills the hall, rich and honest for once. He ladles it into both prisoners' and guards' cups without distinction. The drink is the same for everyone. Strong, hot, faintly sweet. Silence overtakes the room, then small noises of approval murmurs, laughter, even gratitude. The war, for 10 minutes, falls away like a heavy coat shrugged from aching shoulders. When Keller drains the last drop, he stares at the grounds shimmering at the bottom. Tiny black stars in a dull metal sky. He feels both home and nowhere at once. The next morning, the rationed brew returns to its familiar weakness, but something beneath it has changed. Each side, having tasted equality, now carries an unspoken responsibility to remember it. The flavor lingers as proof that kindness, once given, cannot be untasted. By spring 1945, the prairie changes color. The winter grass, yellowed and brittle, gives way to green blades slick with dew. The light softens. It feels almost European in its gentleness, and that confuses the prisoners more than anything else. They have learned this land's language, not its words, but its rhythm. Wake at bugle. Work under the great indifferent sky. Drink the same thin coffee that begins and ends every story. Rumor arrives before the newspapers do. Roars of victory on the radio. Whispers of surrender. Fragments of cities burned or liberated. For the men behind the fence, truth comes one syllable at a time. They keep looking for confirmation in the guards' faces. A subdued solemnity there says enough. Their nation is falling away without ceremony, and all they can do is keep their hands busy until someone tells them who they are now. That morning, as Keller moves through the familiar line toward the mess counter, something in the air feels weighted neither joy nor despair, only finality. The cooks pour the coffee more slowly than usual, speaking in low tones. The urn hisses. The scent fills the room like a memory rehearsing itself. Each prisoner accepts the cup with a nod. No one rushes. It is as if every man senses that this will be their last shared ritual as captives. When Keller sits, the corporal who once ladled their rations steps out from behind the counter and takes the place across from him. He sets down his own cup. Same size, same dents. They look at each other, unsure how to begin. The corporal finally says, "Looks like you boys'll be headin' home soon." Keller answers quietly in accented English, "Home? Yes." Maybe they drink together, and the wind through the open doorway stirs the smell across the room. For an instant, the barbed wire fence outside ceases to mean anything. The taste is still watery, still modest. What matters is that they drink it side by side. Later, when trucks arrive to collect small groups for transport, the prisoners pack their things, carved toys from scrap wood, folded newspapers, a few photographs, and the tin cups they have guarded like keepsakes. Those trembling vessels carry not just habit, but the proof of their having endured. Before boarding, Keller spots the corporal again near the gate. The guard lifts his cup in a silent farewell. Keller returns the gesture. No handshake, no ceremony. Just that brief mirrored movement, enough to close a chapter neither of them had intended to write. As the convoy pulls away, the dust rises softly and settles over the empty chairs in the mess hall. Steam no longer curls from the urn. A single fly circles above the cooling metal. Silence seeps into corners once occupied by voices. It is the silence of something that has ended politely. Months later, from across the Atlantic, postcards begin to arrive at the camp headquarters, now mostly deserted. One shows a rebuilt street in Stuttgart. On the back, neat handwriting. "To my friends in Texas, may you never run out of real coffee." Another encloses a small burlap pouch of dark beans sent "in gratitude for the kindness of thin cups." The surviving guards read the messages aloud, smiling at the absurd tenderness of gratitude born inside a prison. Years pass. The barracks roof collapses. Weeds surge through cracks in the concrete. On humid evenings, locals swear they can still catch a faint roasted smell on the wind, or maybe it's only imagination, stirred by stories handed down. Grandchildren of guards and prisoners alike discover they share the same humor. "You call this coffee?" They laugh, not realizing the phrase once bridged language, pride, and fate. Under a pale Texas sunset, the ruins of the camp hold steady in the quiet. Grass sighs where searchlights once stood. A rusted mug half buried in dirt gleams when the sun tilts just right, a small mirror of what mercy looked like in wartime. The war had forced men into categories: guard and captive, victor and defeated. Yet a cup of weak coffee shared, joked about, remembered, taught them how easily those boundaries dissolve within the everyday acts of survival. In the banality of mealtime, they discovered a language gentler than surrender, simply learning to see one another as human enough to offer warmth. In the end, this is what remains: the memory of taste when everything else was rationed, the hum of sameness in which fear loosens its hold, and the knowledge that even in a world built for division, something as ordinary as coffee can brew a small, steady peace.